4 chilling true fishing horror stories. Number 1. The Haunted Lake. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the lake, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The silence was unnatural, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the cold breeze. The water was unnaturally still, a mirror reflecting the darkening sky, making every ripple seem like a whisper of something lurking beneath the surface. My skin prickled as I cast my line. A sudden chill enveloped me, far colder than the evening air should have been, and I shivered involuntarily, glancing around for any sign of movement. The old wooden boat creaked ominously, as if echoing the groans of restless spirits, adding to the growing sense of dread that settled over me. As I reeled in my line, I felt a sudden resistance, something heavy and unyielding. My heart raced as I fought to bring it to the surface. When it finally broke through the water, I recoiled in horror. Tangled in the line was a decayed, skeletal hand, its fingers still twitching, as if reaching out for me. The ghastly sight sent me scrambling to the back of the boat, nearly tipping it over, and my mind raced with questions. Whose hand was this? How had it ended up in the lake? The air grew thick with the smell of decay, a putrid stench that made me gag and sent shivers down my spine. I had to get out of there, but the boat seemed to have a mind of its own. The engine sputtered and died, leaving me adrift in the middle of the lake, the oppressive silence pressing in on me. Panic set in as I frantically tried to restart it. A low, mournful wail echoed across the water, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of the lake itself. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was not alone. Shadows moved beneath the surface, dark shapes that swirled and twisted, and I could feel their eyes on me, cold and malevolent. The boat rocked violently, as if something enormous was passing underneath it, and I clung to the sides, my knuckles white with fear. Suddenly, the water erupted, and a ghostly figure rose from the depths, its eyes hollow and glowing with an unearthly light. It reached out a skeletal hand, the same one I had pulled from the water. I screamed, the sound tearing through the stillness of the night, but there was no one around to hear me. The figure floated closer, its mouth opening in a silent scream. The temperature dropped sharply, and frost began to form on the edges of the boat, creeping inward toward me. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. The ghostly figure hovered just inches away, its icy breath freezing the air around me. I could see the torment in its eyes, the endless suffering it endured. It spoke without words, its thoughts invading my mind, filling me with images of death and despair, of bodies sinking into the dark depths of the lake. I felt myself being pulled towards the edge of the boat, an invisible force dragging me closer to the icy water. I fought with all my strength, but it was futile. The water seemed to come alive, tendrils of darkness reaching up to wrap around my legs, pulling me down into the abyss. I kicked and thrashed, but the grip was unrelenting. As I was dragged under, I could hear the ghostly wail growing louder, a cacophony of lost souls screaming in agony. My vision blurred as the cold enveloped me. Just when I thought it was over, the force released me, and I burst to the surface, gasping for air. The boat had drifted back to the shore, and I scrambled onto dry land. I looked back at the lake, now eerily calm, and the ghostly figure was gone. But I knew it was still there, waiting for its next victim. I never returned to that lake, but the memory of that night haunts me still. Sometimes in the dead of night, I can still hear the mournful wail, echoing in my mind. The nightmares that followed were relentless, filled with visions of skeletal hands and ghostly figures, their hollow eyes burning into my soul. I tried to tell others about what I had experienced, but they dismissed it as a hallucination, a trick of the mind. But I knew the truth. That lake was cursed, a resting place for restless spirits seeking vengeance, and I had narrowly escaped becoming one of them. Every time I drive past it, I feel the pull, the cold grip of the lake trying to drag me back. I keep my distance, but I know it's only a matter of time. The question lingers in my mind: what lies beneath the surface of that haunted lake, waiting for its next victim? And will I be able to resist its call? The stories of the lake's dark past are numerous, tales of drownings and disappearances, each one more chilling than the last. But few believe them until it's too late. If you ever find yourself near that lake, heed my warning, stay away. The spirits are real, and they are always hungry for new souls to join them. Do you dare to test your luck, to face the unknown horrors that lurk beneath the surface? Leave a comment below if you have the courage. Number 2. The silent depths. It was supposed to be a peaceful day of fishing, but the stillness of the water was unnerving, a silence so complete it seemed to swallow all sound. I felt a growing unease as I cast my line into the depths. The sun was bright, yet the water remained dark, an abyss that seemed to go on forever. My thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, violent tug on the line. My heart pounded as I struggled to reel in whatever had taken the bait, the rod bending almost to the breaking point. What kind of creature lurked in these silent depths? The line snapped, and I stumbled backward, nearly falling into the water. My hands shook as I rewound the reel, my mind racing with possibilities. The silence returned, heavier than before, pressing down on me like a weight. The surface of the lake was unbroken, but I could feel something watching me from below. I cast the line again, my eyes scanning the water for any sign of movement. The seconds stretched into minutes, each one filled with a growing sense of dread. A ripple broke the surface, followed by another, moving closer to the boat. My pulse quickened, and I gripped the rod tighter, ready for whatever was coming. The water parted, and a pale, lifeless face emerged, its eyes wide and unseeing. I froze, unable to look away from the horrifying sight. The face was followed by a hand, then another, as the body floated upward, its limbs twisted and contorted. My stomach churned at the sight of the bloated corpse. The corpse drifted closer, and I could see the marks on its neck, the evidence of a violent struggle. This was no accident, something had killed this person. The silence was shattered by a sudden splash, and the body was pulled back into the depths, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. I was left alone, the silence even more oppressive. I tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, a trick of the light, but the image of that lifeless face was burned into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The boat rocked gently, and I looked down to see a shadow moving beneath the water, circling slowly. Whatever was down there wasn't finished with me. I debated whether to leave, but curiosity got the better of me. I cast the line again, my hands trembling. I had to know what was lurking in the depths. The line went taut almost immediately, and I fought to reel it in, my heart pounding in my chest. The struggle was intense, and I could feel the weight of something enormous on the other end. As I pulled, the shadow beneath the water grew larger, rising toward the surface. My breath caught in my throat as the shape took form. A massive, dark shape broke the surface, and I was confronted with a creature unlike anything I had ever seen. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, and its mouth was filled with rows of sharp teeth. The creature lunged at the boat, and I scrambled to get away, my hands slipping on the wet wood. The boat tipped, and I plunged into the cold, dark water. I fought to reach the surface, but the creature was faster. It wrapped its jaws around my leg, dragging me deeper into the abyss. I could feel the pressure building as we descended. My vision darkened, and I knew I was moments away from blacking out. I kicked with all my strength, trying to break free from the creature's grip. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, the creature released me, and I shot upward, gasping for air as I broke the surface. I clawed my way back into the boat, shivering uncontrollably. The silence returned, and the water was calm once more. But I knew the creature was still there, lurking in the depths, waiting for its next victim. I rowed back to shore as fast as I could, my mind racing with the horrors I had witnessed. The safety of land felt like a distant dream. Once on shore, I collapsed, my body shaking from the ordeal. I looked back at the lake, now so serene, and shuddered at the thought of what lay beneath. The creature's image haunted my dreams, its glowing eyes and sharp teeth a constant reminder of the terror I had faced. I knew I could never return to that lake. The question that lingered was whether anyone else had encountered the creature, and if so, how many had survived to tell the tale. I shared my story with others, but they dismissed it as a fisherman's exaggeration. Only I knew the truth, and it was a burden I would carry forever. The lake's stillness was a trap, luring unsuspecting victims to their doom. I had barely escaped, but I knew others might not be so lucky. I urged anyone who would listen to stay away from the lake, to avoid its silent depths. The creature was real, and it was always hungry. Do you believe in the creatures that lurk beneath the surface, waiting to drag you into the depths? Leave a comment below if you dare. Number 3. The Cursed River. The river flowed with a deceptive calm, its surface smooth and inviting. But I had heard the stories, whispers of a curse that claimed the lives of those who dared to fish its waters. As I cast my line, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness. The sun was high, yet the light seemed to struggle to penetrate the murky water. Shadows danced beneath the surface, hinting at something sinister lurking below. A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I shivered despite the warm day. I scanned the banks, half expecting to see a figure standing there, watching me. The line tugged, and I reeled it in, my heart pounding with anticipation and fear. What would I pull from the cursed river? As the catch broke the surface, I gasped. It was a fish, but its eyes were lifeless, its body twisted and deformed. I felt a wave of nausea. I threw the fish back, watching it disappear into the depths. The stories of the cursed river were true, and I was beginning to understand the danger I was in. The boat drifted lazily, and I cast the line again, my hands shaking. The curse was real, and it had a grip on me now. The air grew colder, and the sky darkened, as if a storm were approaching. I looked around, but there was no sign of bad weather. The chill was coming from the river itself. The water rippled, and a shape emerged, rising slowly. I stared in horror as a figure took form, a ghostly apparition with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. The ghost floated closer, its mouth moving in silent speech. I couldn't hear the words, but I felt them in my mind, a torrent of pain and despair. The figure pointed to the water, and I followed its gaze. Below the surface, I could see other figures, their faces contorted in agony. They were trapped, their souls claimed by the curse. Panic set in, and I tried to paddle away, but the boat wouldn't move. The ghostly figure was getting closer, its hollow eyes locked onto mine. The boat rocked violently, and I clung to the sides, my knuckles white with fear. The ghost reached out, its hand passing through the wood and into my chest. I felt a cold, searing pain as the ghost's touch burned into me. My vision blurred, and I struggled to breathe, the curse tightening its grip. Images flooded my mind, scenes of death and despair, of others who had fallen victim to the cursed river. I saw their final moments, their screams echoing in my ears. The ghost whispered in my mind, telling me of the curse's origins, of a betrayal and a vengeful spirit seeking to drag others into its misery. I fought against the curse, my will clashing with the dark force that held me. I had to break free, to escape the river's grasp. With a final surge of strength, I pushed the ghost away, and it dissolved into the air. The boat lurched forward, and I paddled frantically for the shore. The river fought to keep me, the current growing stronger, but I was determined to escape. The ghostly figures watched from below, their eyes filled with sorrow. I reached the shore and collapsed, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. I looked back at the river, now calm and serene, hiding its dark secret once more. The curse had spared me, but I knew it would claim others. The river was hungry for souls, and it would not be denied. I shared my story with the townsfolk, hoping to warn them, but most dismissed it as a fisherman's tale. Only a few believed, and they kept their distance from the cursed river. The nightmares followed me, filled with ghostly faces and silent screams. The curse had left its mark on me, and I knew it would haunt me forever. I avoided the river, but its pull was strong. I felt its call in my bones, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath its surface. The river claimed many lives over the years, each disappearance a mystery, but I knew the truth. The curse was real, and it was relentless. I urged anyone who would listen to stay away from the cursed river, to heed the warnings and avoid its dark waters. The ghostly figures were always watching, waiting for their next victim. Do you dare to test the curse, to see if the stories are true? Leave a comment below if you have the courage. Number 4. The Phantom Fisherman. The stories of the Phantom Fisherman were well known in the village, a tale of a man who vanished without a trace, his ghost doomed to wander the riverbanks forever. I had always been skeptical, but that changed one fateful night. I set out just before dusk, the air crisp and the river calm. The sun's fading light cast long shadows that danced on the water's surface, creating an eerie atmosphere. As I cast my line, a fog began to roll in, thick and suffocating. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath misting in the air. The fog swallowed the riverbanks, and I felt a growing sense of isolation, as if I were the only person in the world. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional plop of my line hitting the water. A chill ran down my spine, and I turned to see a figure standing on the opposite bank, shrouded in the mist. My heart pounded as I strained to make out the details. The figure wore old-fashioned fishing gear, and its eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural light. I knew instantly that this was the Phantom Fisherman. I watched in morbid fascination as the ghostly figure cast its line into the water, moving with an eerie grace. The fog thickened, and the figure seemed to float above the ground. The air grew colder, and I shivered despite my heavy coat. The Phantom Fisherman looked up, his glowing eyes locking onto mine. A wave of fear washed over me. The ghost began to move towards me, gliding across the water as if it were solid ground. I stumbled backward, my pulse racing. The fog closed in around me, and I could hear the soft whisper of the Phantom Fisherman's voice, a low, haunting murmur that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The ghost reached the edge of the water, and I could see the details of his face: hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and a look of eternal sorrow. His presence was overwhelming, a suffocating weight on my chest. I tried to run, but my legs felt like lead. The ghostly figure reached out a hand, and I felt a cold touch on my skin, as if the life were being drained from me. The whispering grew louder, filling my mind with images of the Phantom Fisherman's past. I saw his life, his family, and the tragic accident that led to his death. The ghost's sorrow was palpable, a heavy burden that seemed to transfer to me. I felt his pain, his despair, and his longing for release. I struggled to break free from the ghost's grip, but the cold was paralyzing. The Phantom Fisherman began to pull me towards the water, his intentions clear. My mind raced as I fought against the ghost's pull. I had to escape, to break the cycle and avoid becoming another victim of the Phantom Fisherman. With a surge of adrenaline, I broke free and stumbled back, gasping for air. The ghost's eyes followed me, filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. The fog began to recede, and the ghostly figure faded into the mist, leaving me alone on the riverbank. The air warmed slightly, but the chill of the encounter lingered. I looked around, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. The Phantom Fisherman was real, and I had narrowly escaped his grasp. I gathered my gear and left the river, my mind racing with the implications of my encounter. The stories were true, and the ghost of the Phantom Fisherman still haunted the waters. The village was skeptical when I shared my story, but a few older residents nodded knowingly. They had heard the whispers, seen the fog, and felt the chill of the Phantom Fisherman's presence. The nightmares began almost immediately, filled with the ghost's sorrowful eyes and his cold, relentless grip. I knew I would never fish that river again. The legend of the Phantom Fisherman grew, each retelling adding to the fear and mystery. I warned others to stay away from the river at night, to avoid the fog and the eerie silence that heralded the Phantom Fisherman's presence. But some were skeptical, dismissing it as an old wives' tale or a figment of imagination. Months passed, and I tried to put the encounter behind me, but the memory of those glowing eyes haunted my every dream. I became obsessed with researching the village's history, searching for clues about the phantom fisherman's origins. One evening, as I pored over old records in the village library, I stumbled upon a faded newspaper article from decades ago. It detailed the tragic story of a fisherman who had vanished under mysterious circumstances, his body never found. According to the article, the fisherman had been out on the river one foggy evening, much like the night of my encounter. Witnesses reported seeing him cast his line into the water, but he never returned home. His family had searched for weeks, but all they found were his fishing gear floating in the river. The villagers spoke of a curse that had claimed the fisherman's life, condemning him to wander the riverbanks as a ghost. The article included a grainy photograph of the fisherman, and my blood ran cold as I recognized the face from my own encounter. It was him, the phantom fisherman. The revelation sent chills down my spine, confirming that what I had seen was not a hallucination or a trick of the mind. The phantom fisherman was real, and he had been searching for something or someone on that foggy night. I returned to the riverbank, driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The air was thick with anticipation, and I scanned the mist-shrouded waters, half expecting to see the ghostly figure once more. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or splash of a fish. The fog began to roll in, and I felt a familiar chill settle over me. Just as I was about to give up hope, a figure emerged from the mist, moving with a haunting grace. It was the phantom fisherman, his form translucent yet unmistakable. His glowing eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a surge of fear and pity. What had driven him to wander the riverbanks for decades, trapped between life and death? The ghostly figure gestured towards the water, and I followed his gaze. Shadows moved beneath the surface, dark shapes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The phantom fisherman's voice whispered in my mind, a plea for understanding and forgiveness. He was trapped by the curse, bound to the river until he found peace. I wanted to help him, to release him from his torment, but I knew there was little I could do. The curse was powerful, rooted in centuries of tragedy and despair. As I watched, the phantom fisherman began to fade, his form dissipating like smoke in the wind. He reached out a hand towards me, a silent farewell. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, but then the ghostly figure vanished completely, leaving behind only the lingering echo of his presence. I stood alone on the riverbank, the silence of the night broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the shore. The curse had claimed another victim, but this time it was not me. I returned to the village with a heavy heart, haunted by the knowledge of what I had witnessed. The phantom fisherman's story was tragic, a reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful waters. I shared my findings with the villagers, hoping to bring closure to the legend of the phantom fisherman. Some believed me, while others remained skeptical, unwilling to accept the existence of ghosts and curses. The nightmares continued, filled with images of the phantom fisherman's sorrowful eyes and outstretched hand. I knew I would never forget the encounter, nor would I ever fish that river again. The question lingered in my mind: what had driven the phantom fisherman to wander the riverbanks, searching for something that could never be found? And would he ever find peace? As I reflect on my experience, I wonder if there are other restless spirits trapped by curses or unfinished business, waiting to be discovered in the depths of our world's waters. Do you believe in the tales of haunted rivers and ghostly fishermen? Have you ever encountered something unexplainable while fishing? Leave a comment below and share your story if you dare.